Well, hello, I'm 𝗣𝗶𝗱 𝗔𝗺𝗍𝗶. Welcome back. This is my experience of owning a Storm DLX 250. This is purchasing, putting it together, and a little bit of initial riding of it. This is 100% paid out of pocket, self-sponsored video. I was paid nothing to make this. This is my own experience, my own views. Hope you enjoy it.
This is a bike I just ordered. It was $1,179 before shipping. Went down, got a plate for it. I don't have my mirrors on, so we're trail riding today, but it's technically a street legal dual sport in Washington. This is basically something that's sold on Amazon. I don't know if this model's listed on there yet, but other than putting handguards on here for 20 bucks, this is straight out the box. And what I've been actually pretty impressed with is, out the box, these things are a pretty darn capable bike.
We'll get back to more riding at the end of the video. Right now we're going to jump into how this thing is shipped, disassembling the crate, what kind of parts come with it, and how to put together the bike pretty well so it'll last you a long time. We cover a lot of this maintenance kind of stuff in pretty good detail, so if that's not the right video for you, you might move on to something else.
So what we have here is a Storm DLX 250. I'm pretty excited about this thing. It's the slightly bigger but same size chassis and everything as this. This is a Storm DLX 150. They're little mini dual sports. This has a 4-speed gearbox with a 150cc engine in it. It's been a great bike. I bought it last year around this time. Ordered this thing after a subscriber told me about it on my last video I made of that bike, that there's a 250 version. They're not really 250s, they're 230s or something in that range. Really wasn't planning to buy another bike going into winter like this, but after seeing it, I was like, man, I gotta check this out. This might be the key. I like the 150, but this one might be pretty damn good. The box came in perfect shape, no issues with that. Doesn't look like a forklift jabbed into it. The other two bikes I ordered from this company have all come in pretty good shape. So it's the 223 Storm DLX 250. That's misconception right there. Ordered the blue one. 176 pounds. This is what I'm really excited about. I think the 150 would turn out to be like 181 or something. So if it's in the ballpark, that's good. That should be the shipping weight with the crate and everything. It's got a steel crate. Yes, point this out in other videos. And the other two bikes I got from 𝗣𝗶𝗱 have not been any issues for me. So yeah, let's pull this box off of here and start assembling this. So maybe it's been just a year since I've packed the other one, but I have to say, I think they're getting a little bit better at packing these things. I don't remember the other dirt bikes that I ordered coming with this extra padding around them to protect them. So they definitely seem to be putting a little bit more effort in to protecting these things in shipment, because it doesn't seem to appear like anything poked in there or damaged anything. So that's always nice to see.
You can see I'm not the only one excited about this motorcycle. My son came down after dinner to help me unpack it and get it ready to ride. He loves motorcycles.
So like I said it before in other videos, all these bikes benefit with the little blue Loctite and all the hardware. Nothing worse than to have a bolt or something rattle out when you're out trail riding. So this setup is very similar to the Storm 150. You can turn these mounts two different directions here, and you can bring the handlebars closer to you or further away. And there's two different mounts up in the headset up here as well. So you got basically 4 positions. Also looks like some blue grease up here, so hopefully it's not just smeared on here but actually put in the headset. All the other bikes I've had, it seemed like they have plenty of grease in the headset. Now the LED turn signals on the last two bikes I got from this company have been great. They work fine. Taillights are crap. Maybe they've improved it. We'll look into this a little bit later. But if not, I'll show you a little tip. Both of mine went out within the first 10 miles of riding. Wet or dry, just some wires would break in the solder joint. So we'll jump in there a little bit later, and there's some wiring up here that has to be tucked out of the way and sealed. But we'll go over that once we get this thing actually put together completely.
So I hope you've been enjoying the video so far. If you did, consider subscribing and hit the like button. I got a lot of other videos covering these 𝗍𝗶𝗱 bikes, all self-sponsored videos. And I have to say, it takes a lot of work to make these videos and go over it. It's probably at least 10 hours of editing. So yeah, again, give it a thumbs up. And please, if you got a nasty comment to leave, just keep it yourself. Remember, maybe your parents didn't teach you that. If you can't say anything nice at all, don't say anything.
So the bolt for the rear shock, because it's disconnected when it comes shipped, is in the same bag as your handlebar mounts are in. So if you're looking for it, it should be in there.
As soon as this bike becomes available on Amazon, I'll put a link below. I did order mine from Power Sports Max. They seem to have a pretty good price, and the few parts I've gotten on my bike that didn't work right, like the taillights, I sent them an email and they got those right out to me. They're pretty good about dealing with that stuff. I think in the first 3 months you got a warranty on the bike.
Now there's two different width spacers that come with your front axle. It was arranged this way: wider side for the rotor side. Make sure to grease your axle before you put it in. And if you take off your rear wheel, do the same on that, because if the axle's sitting here too long without any grease on them, they get stuck in the bearings and they become a total nuisance to try to remove later. We're gonna spray down the rotors here to make sure there's no packing grease or oil on these things. Wipe them down with a little brake clean, and then we'll install this wheel. Check your seals. The last two bikes I've gotten, the seals haven't been pounded in all the way, so we're just gonna take a socket that fits over the seal and make sure it's tapped in just to flush with the aluminum. And this side looks better. I can tap this one in just a hair. They're getting better. Only one of them is really barely out, but now we're going to take some grease, pack it in right where the seal and the bearing is. This will just help if riding through puddles and stuff, to cut down on water getting in and on your sealed bearings here.
So here I'm using a flathead screwdriver to open up my caliper a little bit to give more room to get the disc in there. And sprayed it down with a little bit of brake clean to make sure those pads are nice and oil free. And when you put in your caliper bolts, make sure to put on blue Loctite on them. Those are some bolts you definitely don't want to come out. Here I'm also going over the little speed sensor, putting a little blue Loctite on it. You want to offset it from about 3/16 of an inch off the magnet that spins on your rotor. And also go through your fork tube protectors, pull out the hardware one by one, and put in some blue Loctite on those as well. So I'm really not a big fan of most of the kickstands that come on the 𝗍𝗶𝗱 bikes. I'll probably be going through and adding an aluminum one, maybe a KTM style, just because the kickstands seem pretty low quality.
So this bike came with a number plate and a headlight. Of course, we're going to be running the headlight on this one because it's going to be a little dual sport. And because I live in such a wet region where you end up riding out in the rain a lot, got some more dielectric grease. I'm going to put a little bit on all the connections to make sure water stays out of them. And up here on the turn signals and the tail light, I actually ran clear silicone in on the inner posts where the wires go in, just to make sure water doesn't get into those. It's key on the tail lights where they'll burn out, not just from water, but just from vibration where the soldering joints are. Putting these headlights on are never fun because there's a lot of wire you have to stuff behind them. You're gonna time lapse it and make sure you pay attention to how wires are ran, and make sure you turn the handlebars, make sure nothing's getting pinched and all that. It takes a little while, but do a good job, you shouldn't have a problem with it.
Fully assembling the bike from crate to ready to ride is pretty straightforward. I like it actually. It's a pretty fun way to kind of get acquainted with the new machine. Part I dislike the most is probably putting all the wiring behind the headlight assembly here. Just take your time, make sure everything's ran right, nothing's getting pinched, and you'll get it.
So out of both 𝗍𝗶𝗱 bikes I bought, the chains come wicked tight. This doesn't feel too bad here until you sit on it. Too tight, way too tight. They might do it that way just to anticipate the chain stretching like crazy. I don't like putting that much pressure on my rear bearings and my counter shaft. I go through and back off these adjusters, put a little slack in the chain when I sit on it, make sure the slack is there. You don't want it super tight. And I just know it's part of braking. The chains are going to stretch. Usually these bikes, the batteries and chains aren't really the best quality. Same with the fuel filter and fuel line. All that stuff I'll switch out in a future video. Let's get adjusting this chain. Drain the shipping oil next after that, and hopefully fire this thing up soon. You can see this big aluminum bolt here. It's actually a 24 millimeter, and that's the only way to drain your oil. There should be a little tiny metal mesh screen that sits behind that. So we're gonna crack that open, drain the shipping oil. We're gonna add some good 4-stroke motorcycle oil. I also have a kit I never installed on the Templar. It fits on here and runs oil lines up to an oil cooler. So you can get aftermarket oil coolers that fit right in this plug. I never ran it on the Templar yet, just because it kind of seems like one more thing to get ripped off on the bike. It doesn't get that hot out here in Washington that often. So in case you take this off, there's a little spring-loaded pressure underneath the cap here, a nice O-ring, spring, and up inside of here, there's a little filter. When you look into that cap, when you pull it off, you should be seeing the end of the screen. The seal side goes towards the engine. So most of the time on these bikes, they come with shipping oil, just to keep all the parts from rusting in the engine when it's sitting on a crate. Keeps the clutch hydrated because these bikes have wet clutches. It's good to use actual motorcycle specific oil. This is just something I picked up at the auto parts store. This is like 11 bucks. A little expensive for a quart of oil, but it's $10.40 because it's going into winter here in Washington. Motorcycle specific because a lot of car oils have friction modifiers in the oil, and that's good for engines and cars. But cars have dry clutches separate from the engine. These have wet clutches in the engine oil, and if you run a bunch of oil with friction modifiers, you're gonna get a slipping clutch. All right, let's get filling this thing up. It should take roughly around a quart. And honestly, one thing, the oil that came out of this bike looked like nice golden oil, felt fine. I mean, I can't analyze oil with my fingertips here and tell you all the makeup of it. I didn't see a tag on here that said drain break-in oil immediately or shipping oil. I didn't see anything like that on the bike. Some of the other bikes I've gotten, you drain the oil, it looks very clear, and it said, you know, shipping oil drain out before running. This bike didn't have anything like that, so maybe it ships with break-in oil, I don't know. Figure with an engine, $11, it's not that much to spend. They got such a bargain deal on the bike, you know. So one thing I want to do, I just got the bars mounted originally, and the levers are kind of kicked at different angles, and I just want to go through and make sure the throttle's snapping back, make sure the clutch has a little bit of free play in it, adjust my handlebar angle a little bit, fine tune that stuff so when I get it running, it's good to go. I don't mind these lever chokes up here, but they are not like detented, so when you pull them in, they don't just stay in. And these bikes tend to run super lean from the factory. They just jet them super lean. So in the next video, we're going to rejet this thing, do a bunch of cheap to free mods on this bike to make it work better. One of them is modifying this choke lever so it stays in when you have it in, so you can warm up the bike, put your helmet on, not be sitting here holding it. I'm going to take off the seat to hook up the battery. And this thing is very similar to my KTM and the other Storm bike, and actually the Templar I have. Most modern bikes, instead of having the seat bolts on each side, they just do one right in the back center. Pretty simple, and there's a little clasp that slides under the front. So there's the hardware right there for the battery. These batteries will work. Every single bike I got, the battery was charged, ready to go right out. They're not high quality. They're basically trying to get these things out the door as cheap as possible. You can save yourself about 1.5 pounds, maybe 2 pounds of high weight if you go for a nicer high-end battery, which I'll do in the upgrade video. It's nice they did run an extra fuse and a nice little fuse holder here. So rest of your electronics are down here: voltage regulator, turn signal, relay, CDI box, and probably a starter solenoid, all tucked away right down there. Really simple to get to. So I'm going to turn the key on here. I've always been pretty impressed with the displays on these things. They got a voltmeter, this kilometers. I got to remember how to switch this. There you go, miles per hour. It's on miles per hour now. Miles, you got tripometer, odometer, voltmeter, tach, digital tach along the way. It actually has a gear indicator on the side. Neutral light, turn signal light, Tells you your high beams, low beams. Really simple, but the gear indicators are pretty cool little feature, but really high-end gauge cluster, nicely sealed. Never seen moisture in either of mine. This is the same as on my other Storm and on my Templar. It's kind of nice to stay with the same thing instead of changing it up all the time. It's a very simple, really nice display. I'd say it's a little nicer than the 𝗏 display. I still need to put on my mirrors, put some gas in it, and look over a few other things, but I'd like to go through a headlight check. Kind of neat on these ones, there's a switch up here. You can turn the headlight on and off. On high beam, low beam, these are all LED lights on here. LED turn signals, and they're flexible mounts too. Rear turn signal, front brake, running lights already on, rear brake pedal. Looks like everything works. Check the horn. Oh yeah, good to go. Here's one thing I really think you guys need to know, we need to address, is there's a wiring loom down here. Super vulnerable for getting corrosion, water in it, and super vulnerable to just getting hit if you did any bigger jumps. And maybe they've upgraded the soldering joint in these, but both my other 𝗍-𝗱 bikes, the taillight stopped working within the first 10 miles. I had to solder it again, and they sent me up new ones at a request, and they're really fast about getting me warranty stuff, but I'm not going to second guess it on this one. I'm just going to take it off here real quick, show you guys how to fix this, seal it up, and make sure those wires don't bust, and we'll get to this wiring loom. Because it's muddy outside, as soon as I ride this thing outside, all this is going to be coated in mud. I'd rather do it while the bike is clean, so let's jump into that. It's a really simple mod. This little ground wire, I believe it is, breaks off the circuit board in here. There's a rubber grommet, and water will get up in there too because it's not really sealed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this grommet back out of the way, and then I'm going to take some RTV silicone and squirt it all around there. This is clear. I'm also going to go around this whole thing and do a little silicone bead. Make sure to squirt a bunch in where these wires go in. It's not going to hurt anything. It keeps them vibration dampened so they don't break off the circuit board. Also, I had to clip a few little black zip ties in here so I can pull down the wiring loom. But I'm going to go seal this up real quick. And then we're going to put some dielectric grease in all these electrical fittings connections down here. And wrap this up and tuck it way up out of the way so it doesn't get ripped down and all your wiring loom gets torn apart when you first time you bottom out the bike. Oh wow, there's actually a little bit of clear silicone in there. That's good. Put some more in there, but that's good. Maybe 𝗍-𝗱 saw my videos. I don't know, because I've contacted them and told them about this stuff, and you almost hear nothing back other than they'll get you a replacement part. Maybe they took some information from that. But it looks like they already squirted some in there. That's good. I live in a really wet climate. That's why I'm putting this extra sealant around here. I cut a few zip ties, 3, to get the taillight wires down so I can pull the taillight out. But here's your wiring loom. It's tucked up here pretty well, but we can do better. So we're going to take apart these connections, at least push some dielectric grease into all the connections. That's what I like to do. I'll be riding a little bit throughout the winter, so it's going to be mostly rainy season. But you really want to consider tucking this up as high as you can. This is not RTV, this is dielectric grease. It's for electrical connections. Where I'm at, this works fine, so I'm just packing a little bit of this in there. We're just going to go through and wrap all this up tightly with electrical tape and zip tie up to the bottom frame rails, way up high, way out of the way, so those knobbies don't tear them apart. Now these bikes run extremely lean from the factory. I think it's just a emissions thing they have to get around, so they jet them to a point where they don't run very good. But they also have tamper-proof screws. We'll go over all that in the future video. Do yourself a favor, run ethanol free. Ethanol free will be much better on your carburetor, especially if you don't ride even once a week, you know, if your bike's sitting around for a month or longer. Another thing is the tires have plenty of air in them, but they feel rock hard. They weren't that bad, only 20. I brought down to 18. Probably do 16 in the rear. So 𝗍-𝗱, if you're watching my videos, you should know I have a common complaint. Put a damn reserve on your motorcycles and put a transparent tank like a KTM would have so you can actually see the fuel level. I'm gonna probably tilt this over a little bit, try to get some gas in that float bowl, and crank it over. So here's the choke up here, finger choke. Yeah, hold it on continuously. And to get these bikes to start, you hit the starter switch, it won't do anything. Make sure your engine kill switch up here on the handlebars to on. You push the starter switch, it won't do anything. It's because you have to actually pull in the front brake or push on the back brake to make it crank over.
Well, the bike runs great. Just had to turn up the idle about a quarter turn because it wouldn't idle very much at all. So I just turned up the idle a little bit, and actually it's running and warmed up pretty quick. It's muddy, it's dark, it's almost 11 o'clock in my place, so I'm going to wait until riding it until tomorrow. Feels pretty good. Feels like it's going to have the torque and a little extra power that the 150 just didn't have. You had to ride the 150 pretty wound out. So I've heat cycled the engine where you just warm it up, ride it a little bit, and then shut it off and let it cool down. I've done that about 3 times so far. It's been kind of rainy out today. The bike's running pretty good. This is a 28mm carburetor. An interesting thing, I dug up my old Templar carb off the Templar 250, and that's the exact same carb. This one's been modified so you can actually take out the float bowl. Those screws have been modified, and I pulled out the plug in this one for the idle mixture screw. We'll jump into here probably in the next video and rejet it. I actually feel that jetting on this bike is a little closer to proper jetting. I'm like about 800 feet up than the Storm 150's jetting and the Templar 250. So this carb's probably pretty good. I think we're just going to leave it. I think it's matched really well for the bike. One thing I need to do, I'm going to take off the air filter here and throw some oil on it. Make sure to pick up some air filter oil in a local motorcycle shop. There'll be links below if you want to just order through that. Just oil your filter. It cuts down a bunch of fine particulates getting into your engine. Also causes a little bit of a restriction that bike should have on the air filter, which will make it run a little bit richer if you're having a lean condition. So probably removing the passenger pegs now, because I noticed from the factory they didn't install them right. There's detents that aren't working from these metal plates. We'll get around to modifying those and setting them up later. We have both the license plate on because I got it registered today. That was smooth sailing. And we're going to cut off this extra part of fender, do a little bit of a back fender guard delete. One of the best little things I think offers great value, protection, everything is hand guards. Did it as soon as I got this bike, I put them on. Ordered another set, and here they are. We're going to put them on here because we're going riding tomorrow. All right, got the Storm 250 loaded up in the back of the mini truck. Usually I would be riding up to this spot, but it's probably about 30 miles round trip. Still breaking in the engine. I got 1.9 miles on the bike. Did 4 heat cycles so far where you warm it up for a while until it's operating temperature, ride a little bit, and then shut it off. So we're gonna go ride. It was really questionable what the weather's gonna do. It's still questionable, but it's not raining at the moment, so let's go. So one thing to keep in mind, as you know, I'm still breaking this thing in. This is a bike I just ordered. It was $1,179 before shipping. Went down, got a plate for it. I don't have my mirrors on, so we're trail riding today, but it's technically a street legal dual sport in Washington. And this is basically something that's sold on Amazon. I don't know if this model's listed on there yet, but other than putting hand guards on here for 20 bucks, this is straight out the box. And what I've been actually pretty impressed with is, out the box, these things are a pretty darn capable bike. Once I get this bike broken in a little more, it's gonna be fun to be able to open it up a bit more when you want to. I'm trying to be easy on it, so. Yeah, I could definitely outride that back shock pretty quick on here. I feel like I keep favoring it all day. So preload instantly when I get home. I still don't know if that's gonna be enough, but we'll start with that. I mean, if it's bobbing out too quick, putting more spring pressure on there is gonna help. Probably not make up for the shock just not being valved right for my weight, but I don't think there's any adjustments other than adding the spring tension to the thing, so preload that thing. Not as much grunt as the Templar 250 has. Keep in mind this bike, they say 250. The Templar is actually a true 249cc engine. I have the 5-speed regular Templar model, and it's got a bit more grunt than this, but this still has a lot more grunt than the 150, and it's got that 5-speed gearbox. And I'm still breaking in. I mean, hell, I only got 6.8 miles on the bike, so, and it's still stock jetting. I mean, keep in mind, this ride to this bike is bone stock. I just put it together. Third gear, a little clutch wheelie.
pretty good. I would say this engine I think has enough grunt to keep regular trail riders happy. I'm not like a power freak, but I mean, if this had the Templar engine in here, and I would take it if it didn't add much weight. If the Templar engine added 20 extra pounds, I would take a 20-pound lighter bike and keep this engine in it. That's kind of the way I feel about weight and power. I would much rather have a lighter bike with less horsepower, because it doesn't take that much to keep up with the big bikes, because you're not on them completely. This is like war tight trails and stuff. You can't be just wide open. It's not like a desert race. And weight's a big factor. I mean, that bike up there is 220 pounds. This bike is 40 pounds lighter. And at the end of the day, you're not feeling it. I'm 43 now. I've been riding since I was about 8 years old. Had probably over 30 bikes. And as I get older, I don't want to be lugging around a giant bike, man. I've had a XR650L I've ridden on all this stuff. It's a heavy pig. I've also ridden that thing to Montana with a month's worth of gear and camped off of the bike and ripped around, had a lot of fun, but I'm not doing that as much anymore because I got kids. And this is one of those bikes that it's a great size. If you got a little property and you get your kid into riding, you're gonna have fun on this. That KTM up there wasn't fun to putt around with kids on small bikes. It's a big bike, and it just kind of, the two-stroke, it kind of wants to be ridden. And this one you can kind of just putt around with your kids, have fun, but you can also rip these trails pretty good. I don't think I'd have any problems keeping it up or passing most of my friends out here on this thing. Well, there you have it. I put, I think, came up here with under 2 miles, and the bike has 25.8 miles on it so far. Did really well. Looks like the chain stretched quite a bit, so I'm gonna have to adjust that chain, wipe it down, wash it down. Gonna do a little full trail ride review of this thing in the next video, and then the video after that, get some parts together and do a cheap to free mods on this thing to kind of spec it out to where realistically I'm happy with, and I think we should be able to do that for 200 bucks, maybe 250, and should be good enough for what I expect to do with it. Until next time, hope you enjoyed the video. Bye.